So the topic of today is man free or determined? Of course, when we use the term man, we're obviously talking about the generic humankind, mankind, humanity. If a man gets married, then he's no longer free. Is that the joke here? Right. Okay. So is man free or determined? This is a metaphysical issue, and I know some groups don't even really get into metaphysics anymore, but we do. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. So let's define some terms here. Determinism is the doctrine that all events, including human action, are ultimately determined by causes external to the will. Some philosophers have taken determinism to imply that individual human beings have no free will and cannot be held morally responsible for their actions. Other definitions of determinism may come up, but this is just one of various ways that you can talk about it. And then there's the related concept of predestination, which is in its most thoroughgoing form, is the doctrine that God has decreed every event that is to take place, or at least that each person's destiny is fixed by divine decree. So this is theological determinism. There's a person there that decides this is the way everything's going to be. A classic expression of this view is Calvinism. Some of you may have heard of that. I can just briefly tell you about that. It's not, I wouldn't say it is the traditional view of Christianity. In fact, I very much reject this viewpoint. I think it's almost heretical. I mean, it's not, I don't think this is biblical Christianity. But in Calvinism, you start with total depravity, the idea that everybody in the whole world is totally depraved, can't make any moves toward God. So what does God do to make up for that? Well, he unconditionally elects certain ones. So you see that the little circle in the middle, that represents, probably being generous, represents all the people in the world for whom that God actually elected to salvation. These are the ones that he just, for whatever reason, he said, okay, these are the people I want to be in heaven with me, and I'm going to elect them to be with me. And then what he does, then he sends Christ into the world to die on the cross, but only for them, only for the elect. And the rest of the human population is left in their damnation.
Sucks for you.
What's that?
Sucks for you.
Yeah. And of course, as a theist and as a Christian, I cannot see how that is biblical at all. What I understand the Bible to be teaching is that Jesus died for everyone, and that whosoever believes in him will not perish. So anybody in the whole world has an opportunity to become one of the elect and go to heaven. So that's very different from, I think, it's true biblical Christianity. But this is the Calvinistic view of Christianity. And then there is then God takes these people that he dies for, and he takes them through the process of salvation and enables them to persevere to the end, and they're the ones that are going to be saved for that. Okay, that's called the tulip theology.
Hold on, I'm a Calvinist. I'm offended by that.
Take
I'm
it
a
easy.
Calvinist.
Take it easy.
Were you familiar with Calvinism when you were in the church?
Yeah.
What did you think about it when you were in?
I couldn't reconcile it.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried. I'll play devil's advocate, not to be coy with my words, but yes, I couldn't figure it out. It didn't. I don't see how they came to that conclusion, but that's me.
The Jehovah's Witnesses also believe in the same thing, a limited number of people.
Well, yeah, that's a little different though. I mean, you by choice that well, there's 144,000.
Yeah. I mean,
those are the ones going to go heaven. But if you want to, you can live on paradise earth forever. You know, if you join the religion.
yeah, this is good.
Yeah. You actually used to be a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
So,
They don't believe in determinism. That's what
yeah.
You don't believe in what?
They don't believe in determinism. They believe in
Yeah. Okay. Okay, now that keep moving on with some more definitions. Fatalism is the belief that all events are predetermined and therefore inevitable. And I would say that Calvinism is a form, it's a theological fatalism. You know, I mean, it's just, does Islam have a view of fatalism in some way?
Well, it's the idea that all people have free will to do whatever they want. They're physically capable of doing, but certain events are foretold, even in the Bible. In the Revelations, and the Quran has its own eschatology about the end times and things like that. And a lot of times they correspond because they're both Abrahamic traditions.
Yeah.
But most Muslims, maybe the Sufis, the people who are into the mysticism, might talk about this. But in general, theologians don't really put much stock in this fatalism idea that everything is predetermined. I mean, like, what do we call an event? Like, do I put my leg down at this moment, or was that predetermined? Or is it only big world events? And at that point, what's a big world event? Is the government shut down a big event, or are we talking the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in World War I, which led to all these events? A lot of people don't talk about it. It's just live your life as best you can.
I was under the impression that Islam had a fairly important doctrine of fatalism. Was pretty much.
Not to the level of everything being predetermined.
Yeah.
But that maybe certain things that are already foretold are predetermined. Maybe not in the exact way, but maybe the end result might be predetermined.
Yeah. Okay. All right, another definition of that, the belief that what will be, since all past, present, future events have already been predetermined by God or another all-powerful force. In religion, this is what we call predestination. So does anybody here feel that way, that whatever will be, will be? Whatever will be, you
To some
I
extent,
think that's a tautology, but I mean,
Whatever,
whatever will
yeah,
be, will be. That's true in all possible worlds.
Yeah, you could say.
I think the point, William Lane Craig pointed out that the differences between whatever will be, and whatever will be, must be. Like,
Yes. Okay.
the last one is sort of the fatalist.
Right. Okay. So revising the definition there, whatever will be must be.
Uh-oh. Now my head's spinning. I think there's definitely an element, but I think we can't understand the role it plays. I mean, obviously we have choices, but we have choices within a framework. And our choices can affect the framework,
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, here's another definition. Then you got free will, on the other hand. The theory that human beings have freedom of choice or self-determination, that is, given a situation, a person could have done other than what he did. It's called libertarian free will. That's a pretty important phrase there. I could have done other than I did. So do you believe that whatever you just did, you could have done otherwise?
Yes.
You believe that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do all of you believe that?
No.
There might not be infinite alternative possibilities, but there are some alternatives to every choice.
Okay. But we have a little bit of disagreement there? Okay.
I would say, I would say that I don't know and I have no way of knowing because I already have done it. Not to be too obvious about it, but I've already done it. Right? My awareness of it that I did has already happened as well. So I can't say. I don't know.
So, but do you have this
I want
idea?
to test for that.
You have this idea that you could either get another brownie or not get another brownie.
Right. I mean, my body wants another brownie, but my brain does not want to continue adding weight after my weight loss from this last winter, so I don't know what's going to happen.
You don't know what's gonna happen. Whatever will be, will be.
Well, see, and that's the thing is, I don't know if I'm more or less determinist because I can't see any reason not to be. But as far as fatalism is, I think of it as like, can you rewind the tape or can you rewind and also fast forward? Right? And fatalism is fast forward the tape. It's the same no matter which direction you go. And I don't know what I think about that. I think that you could probably rewind the tape and see the cause and effect chain all the way back. But I don't know if the cause and effect chain is absolutely permanently fixed in the forward direction. I don't know.
Interesting.
How would I know?
Yeah. Okay. Then there's compatibilism versus incompatibilism. And you can have incompatibilists be on either side of this. You know, the idea of compatibilism is that's a theory that in ways that may be impossible to comprehend, determinism and human free will are compatible in the sense that both can exist in the case of human actions. So this idea that, okay, God has predetermined, or some other force has predetermined me to, say, eat that next brownie. Yet, at the very same time, I have genuine freedom to choose to eat that brownie. Is it true? Can it be true that God controls every single action, or some mechanistic force controls every single action at the same time, and actually and genuinely have free will? The compatibilist says that those are actually compatible. Those two seemingly contradictory things that are. Incompatibilism is the theory that it is impossible for determinism and free will to be true at the same time. If humans are indeed free, determinism must then be false. So, what an incompatibilist would say would be that I could do other than what I just did, or I can do other than what I'm going to do. I really can. It's not like I think I can. I really could. In fact, I'm going to try right now and do it. You know. So, what do you think? Are you an incompatibilist or a compatibilist?
I don't think that God's control is mechanistic down to the atomic level of what you think and do. Maybe results might be determined, big things like that, but we can choose. Otherwise, there's no reason for the criminal justice system.
Okay.
And such a thing would be, what's the point? And if you're God, what are you doing? Running a computer simulation where everything is already predetermined? What was the point of that?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me either.
So I think
But you can't say, I mean, if you can falsify any of these things, if you can make it testable, then you can, you can determine whether there's any reality to it, but you can't, base things on, say, well, I believe this or I believe that. If it doesn't have anything that backs it as a, it's a reason, okay, but why is that reason viable? And, what makes it, anybody could say, well, I believe this and I believe that, but to determine the truth of it, there has to be some way to test it. And if it's not testable, then it's based on faith. And if it's based on faith, then can it really have substance? Can it be something used in a substantive debate?
Well, I think the whole branch of metaphysics is largely untestable. Whether you're atheism is a belief too. It's a faith that in a belief that there is no God.
I don't think that is what atheism is.
Science is a faith.
Is just, it's like there's not a word for those who do not believe in Easter Bunny or Santa Claus. It's just not. It's not. There's no need to have that. The only reason I think there's the need for the word atheism is just because of the predominance of religions. The thousands.
In contrast to.
Right.
Would you say it's a worldview? It's a way of looking at the world?
Oh yeah, I mean it's.
Maybe that's a better word.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm
Which is-
just saying.
Yeah.
To test it, if it's not testable, then it makes it difficult to, you know, you can still, there's no reason not to be, you know.
Is that criterion testable? That nothing should be put forward. Oh, don't get me on tape. I mean, is the criterion of testability? It sounds a little bit like the logical positivist verification criterion of meaning. That something can only be said to be meaningful if you have either it's incorrigible, it's self-evident, or you have sort of direct empirical evidence for the belief. But I mean, the positivists themselves realize that the verification criterion of meaning failed all of those tests. It can't. You see what I'm saying?
Right, yeah. I'm not trying to say that
Right.
if you believe something and that's what gives you comfort, that is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, you know, to be able to, I guess for me, and I can just speak for myself, to get on board with something, I would have to have something that's more testable, you know, and repeatable, for it to become more, you know, viable as something that, you know, okay, this is a belief. You know, we all have beliefs, and so it's when we test those beliefs that we can determine their validity.
Okay, so what you're saying is the idea that I could have done other than what I just did, or that I couldn't have done whatever other than what I just did. That's not a testable assertion, or was that the point you're making?
Well, yeah, right. I don't think it's testable because obviously you have to have two of you, and you have to test, you know, or maybe have 100 of you and test you each individually, have a control group, and have, you know,
And a time machine.
Exactly. And those
That would
things
be a
are.
requirement.
We always think what we could have done better, should have been, you know, coulda, shoulda, woulda. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's.
It's some of that though intuitive. I mean, let's say I get lazy and I stayed a bit too long. You know, I have that regret. You know, I know I could have gotten up earlier. You know, we all know that we could have. We really just decided to do it. You know, so is that? Can you prove that? I don't know if you can prove it, but you can have reasons, right? You know, we'll get into all that later. Let me just keep defining the
I
terms.
think that's a good point, though, that I agree with you, Todd. And first of all, I don't think you can lump atheists as one group of people.
Yeah, I was
I
going to
don't
say.
think it's slicing all Christians believe in the same thing.
Yeah.
Or, I think there's just too many different types of atheists.
Yeah.
Logic apparent and worldviews apparent amongst atheists. So, but I do agree with you that some things are not testable. But the other point is that it's also the questions we ask and the ideas that we come up with for possible solutions are only based on our own reason. So when we're testing and trying to find empirical evidence for decision making or consciousness, we're testing based on our knowledge and our own criteria. So there's questions that we would not have the capability of even forming because we would have the knowledge to form those.
Okay, we probably need to, because I want to get to these other presentations. That's a good response.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, indeterminism. It's another concept, the belief that at least some events occur without a prior determining state of affairs. So indeterminists may believe that some or many or perhaps all events happen without some predetermining cause. So you have, then you have self-determinism, which is somewhere in the middle of these two things, is the middle road between determinism and freedom. Man not only is affected by his environment, he creates changes within his environment. Self-determinism proposes that the self is at times a causal agent, thereby a degree of freedom and determination may be combined. So we're talking about causal or agent causality. Okay, so three options here. Of all the action in the universe, some of it could be chance, some of it could be necessitated, or maybe all of it's necessitated, all of it's chance, or maybe there's also this this agent causality that's going on. That there are persons that make decisions that affect the future. Is that true? Or is it just all necessitated? And then there's biological versus social determinism. Biological determinism, the hypothesis that biological factors such as an organism's individual genes completely determine how systems behave or changes over time. Then there's social determinism, which is the theory that social interactions and constructs alone determine individual behavior. So you got this nature versus nurture debate, genetics versus environment. Okay, so I want to show you this. I've shown this before, but this little formula. Why are we the way we are? G plus E plus G plus C. What goes in those?
I guess that one of those is God.
Genetics, environment.
No one of them's not God.
No. Two G's.
Genetics, first two, genetics and environment. Okay, G for me stands for. Okay, the reason I say this is some people think of genetics and environment as everything. You know, it's like either genetics or environment or a combination of the two, and that's the reason you do the things you do, or you know, act the way you act, or are the way you are. And I think there are a couple other factors. One is, in a way, it doesn't go back to God, but the G stands for grace. Sometimes there are external factors. It may be someone else in your life. Of course, that's environment, but I'm thinking of something supernatural coming in, infusing the grace as an enabling power that enables me to do right when I really didn't want to do right otherwise. You know, that's grace. And then the C stands for what this is all about here: choice. My choices. So the reason I am the way I am is not because of all those other factors, but I am a causal agent. I can decide to improve myself or become completely wasted. Right? I can choose to waste my life, or I can choose to make something out of my life. Yeah, those others are factors, but ultimately, do you agree? I choose to live my life the way that I want to. No. Anyway, so that's genetics plus environment plus grace plus choices is why I am what I am and do what I do. And then I want to point out that I think freedom is limited. So you have, let's say, someone who is hooked on alcohol and drugs, just living on the streets. I think their choices to do right is very limited. But I think there's still something. You know, they can't get up and go start a business and make $100,000 in a month. You know, they don't have that ability. But they can begin to make good choices, and then as they make good choices, then I think their freedom is expanded. They have greater ability to make positive choices. And then if they keep moving in the right direction, then they have greater and greater possibilities. But there's always limits. There's still a limit to our freedom.
That alcohol and drug addiction are considered diseases, right? So I'm not sure how much choice some people have that are addicted to alcohol and drugs, unless, you know, that choice might be to respond to someone getting them into like a recovery program of some sort. But in terms of just saying, oh, I think I'm going to get up today and apply for jobs, or I'm going to get, you know,
That's my point. That's the exact point I'm making. You get these other factors involved, but you can make that little choice. A person can decide whether they're going to let someone help them. I think.
They can decide to respond.
They can decide to respond, and then we get frustrated when they don't want to respond. They're just happy with where they're at.
I think that's a good point, alcoholism, because there's choice involved there, but there's really not much not much choice involved in
It's
cancer.
not a choice to not be an alcoholic or an addict. I mean, you're always going to be an addict. But the choice might be to
Get
respond
better.
to the help, I guess.
Yeah.
But
So-
what happens in this situation? Say I'm driving home tonight and I go over a stone bridge and an enormous block of stone falls off this bridge on top of my car. And that did happen to go from, by the way. And I'm brain dead. And I'm living as a vegetable. I had no choice over that happened.
Okay. So you think, so in some case, of course, if you die, I guess as far as this world goes, you have no more choices.
Yeah,
And
well,
so you
it's,
get,
it's the same thing. But
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we
if
want
you're brain dead, it's the same as being.
Yes, and that, so is that my freedom? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, you have very, very little freedom in that case. It's constricted on almost nothing. But I think generally we do have freedom, but that freedom can expand the more choices we make. Okay, and this is the last slide here. Evidence for a degree of freedom, the immediate consciousness of freedom, which we've already alluded to, just seems to be the case that we sense that we have freedom. The sense of personal responsibility. I know that I'm responsible for my action. And of course, the legal system recognizes that as well. Moral judgments on human conduct and character. We all make judgments. Other people make judgments on us. Is that right? But it seems like that's a fact, and so I think we need to accept that. And then the fact of deliberation. Juries do this. We weigh all the evidence, and we make a decision. If we don't have freedom, why would we even deliberate in order to make a decision? So, all right, John, your turn.
Okay, like I said, I prepared this at the very last minute, so I apologize if it's. Oh, wait, I need one. That's why I got one. I apologize if it's very dry. Had a family emergency last night. I didn't have as much time as I hoped.
You're going for the brownie.
Would you
You're
like
making that
some
choice.
coffee?
Is it decaf by chance?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, sure, thank you. Sorry.
I thought it was magic. Wherever we want.
Oh, it's whatever you want.
Thank you very much.
And you like cream or sugar? There's some of that there.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to argue the position.
Can you wait just a second so we can get
Oh
you?
yeah, we got cream.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to more or less argue for determinism. Yeah, I hold an agnostic position in the sense that I don't necessarily say that I know this answer. I don't know that it can be knowable in the strict sense of the word. So it's also important that I tell you guys up front, I'm going to be arguing from a certain worldview that is non-dualistic. In other words, I don't, in the mind-body problem, I believe they are the same thing. That's, I'm sure, a whole other discussion that I don't think is in the scope of this. I'm also materialistic in that I don't believe in anything outside of what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG. That being said, because of that, imperialism is very important. Empiricism is very important to me. Provable positions are important. I don't see that the question can be proven. So I'll argue not for determinism from like a logical standpoint, but rather against the value of the free will hypothesis. Like, why do we need this hypothesis in the first place? The first problem is I have a problem with the vague definition of free will. Mark, you've done a great job going through different takes on it, but what is will? I think we all agree will is the conscious decision of a person to act. But what does free mean? Obviously it doesn't mean zero cost. So it means like without restriction, without enforcement, without mandate. What exactly does that mean? I personally think that vague ideas aren't worth going into too much. But hey, here we are, so let's analyze it. You mentioned Calvinism. Okay, so that would be free from God's mandate. That's obviously not what we're probably going to be talking about. So what else could we be free from? It says free will. What is the will free of? And the only other thing I can think of is cause and effect. We're implying that we're free from cause and effect. So what can we all agree with? I think we can all agree that there are causes and effects, unless anybody does not agree with that. And I think, hopefully, we can agree that human behavior sometimes has known causes. Neurophysiology continues to make advances in our understanding of the mechanics of the brain. So we can say, I have a thought, I can at least trace to some degree some of the causes of that thought, whether it be my memories, my desires, my various factors inside my body. And many times neural imaging can predict things that we are going to think or do. So I think that we can show that there is at least some precedence of that. Can we propose an addendum to those two agreements? All right, so hopefully we agree with those two things. Can we show that there's maybe something else worth talking about? Is there any information that supports non-caused events to occur? So we're free from cause. What happens in this world that does not have a cause? I don't know of anything, except the supposed mind-body, which is, I think, the next thing. Do you know of anything that would enable non-causality? No, that's not the next thing. Again, I apologize, I'm being very dry. I'm surprised no one's mentioned quantum mechanics yet, because that usually comes up in these kinds of conversations. But I don't know that quantum mechanics is non-causality. It's probabilistic causality, which I don't know that you mentioned. That's why I'm not sure if you can fast forward the tape, because it's probabilistic which way it's going to go. But that's at the quantum level. Who the heck knows? I don't talk about quantum physics. I don't know anything about it. So dualism, mysterious mind agent. This is why I think we have this concept of dualisms. We perceive ourselves and our mind to be separate from the body. And that's very mysterious to us, and we have no way to really understand the physical nature of that mind. And so that serves as a process of, that mystery serves as the process to say, here's something that isn't caused. But while our understanding of the brain is complete, there's a growing precedence of information that consciousness is, at least, like I said, partially the result of neurophysical processes, so it's involved. I think that ultimately it comes down to ethics, like we've said before. We propose free will to serve as a justification for our punishments, which is a violation of ethics. You know, if I'm going to punish somebody, I'm going to do something to them that they don't want done to them, and that's normally what someone would consider to be, in any other circumstance, wrong. You know, to lock someone up in a room and feed them these meager meals would normally be considered unethical. So here we're about to do it to somebody because they've, you know, killed someone, and now we need to justify that in ourselves, in our minds. So why is it okay to hurt someone as punishment? Must they be bad? Must their actions have no traceable cause in order for us to be justified in punishing them? So that takes me to our next step. What are the various purposes of punishment? Since that seems to be, in my position, why we keep coming back to free will. The reasons why we might engage in punishment are reparation, to restore damage. So I stole your CD player and I have to buy you a new one. Deterrence of subsequent violations, in other words, to prevent me from doing it again or to prevent someone else from doing it again. Rehabilitation is reformative, and then incapacitation being jail. Just I'm going to keep doing the wrong, so just lock me up. I'm not sure if there are others that I consider valid, but the question I pose is that, are any of these purposes of punishment incompatible with cause and effect? Because I think if all of human behavior is caused, every single one of those purposes of punishment is still valid. Every single one of them still holds a reason to happen. Is it not on here? Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, so if they are still effective, then I believe determinism, to mean the opposite of free will anyways, is unchallenged at this point. Wikipedia does mention another reason for punishment called retribution. The two wrongs make a right. So to hurt someone just because they hurt you, which I don't think that's ethical, and I don't see that it's terribly effective either, so I don't think it's consequential to determinism. So as I see it, from a deterministic model, punishment would just be one element of the causal chain. Therefore, it's perfectly compatible with that model. Therefore, since cause and effect model can explain human behavior, although the explanation is not 100% total, that's typical of science, right? No information that violates cause and effect model. Again, like I said earlier, I don't know of anything that shows that it's without a cause, with the exception of the mysterious dualistic mind-body problem. No mechanism understood by which there are non-caused events. Obviously, if you're believing in supernatural, that point does not apply to you, because you have a mechanism, right? You believe in a spirit or a soul outside of our scope of cause and effect that can interject and change things around. I don't believe there's a need for free will to justify punishment. Therefore, the free will hypothesis is unsupportable, unnecessary, and irrelevant. So feel free to grill me.
Why do you say 9D
Okay.
when you admitted that it seemed unethical to lock somebody in a room for, doing something else? I mean, something that we wouldn't normally do to that person because it, just doesn't seem like the right thing to do anyway. But we justify ourselves to lock somebody up in this room and feed them meager meals. How is that justifiable if that person really didn't have any choice in doing whatever we think deserves punishment?
Well, is locking him up repair a problem? Probably not. Does it deter him from making subsequent violations when he gets out?
Well, as long as
He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to get locked up again, so he's not going to get
Yeah.
out. Does it rehabilitate him in any way? Maybe. Does it prevent him from making further violations? Yes. There's at least 3 of those that I think is justified. by
Okay, but
locking
it's
him.
still immoral. The point is that it wouldn't still be immoral to lock him up.
Not if everybody says it's not immoral.
Well, the mob factor doesn't factor into your reasoning here.
The what?
You can't use the mob factor as justification for why we should do something.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make sense. We'd be living like the Romans if everybody's decided to degenerate down to depraved behavior.
I didn't say anything about degenerate depraved behavior.
Well, you said that the mob factor.
You said the mob factor.
No, I said you can't use the mob factor, and you said why not?
Right.
Well,
But I
I'll
didn't
give
say
you
that
one
we
of the
could.
reasons. Well,
But when you talk about mob factor, what you're really talking about, it seems to me, is what the larger portion of the social group is deciding is right or wrong. And in most cases in society, the decision is towards order of some sort. So it may be a mob decision, but unless you have some kind of method of determining any sort of absolute right and wrong, it is sort of mob
I know, but
determining it.
that's the result. Mark's question asked, not should we do it, but how can you justify it morally?
Who-
Yes.
who's
I mean,
the-
why should we look for another alternative?
Who's the determiner of morality? I think it's
Well, that's what he's asking. It's so that yes, and I don't believe he quite answered that.
So in certain countries, it's acceptable to kill someone for committing a certain crime, and in some countries, it's not. Now, if you're going to call that the mob factor, okay, I call it government.
But that's talking about the law and what we do now. And Mark was asking what we do now. Obviously we do that because we need to keep people safe. Innocent people need to be kept safe. We don't have an alternative. So we take people who do things that are hurtful to other people and we lock them up and we punish them.
Ironically,
And that's
take
the
away their
system
free
that we
will.
use because
to a
we
degree.
have, 3 levels. We have governments who went to war, so I didn't grow up in Scotland speaking German. And we have police and laws at a societal level within our government so that I feel safe, so that anarchy doesn't rule, and I can go home to my house tonight and know that I don't need a gun to defend myself, that I'm going to be safe, I can call the police. And then there's my own personal limits that I set on myself, that I have a moral roadmap.
Okay.
That it's either because I have reached conclusions in my life, because I have learned, say I was locked up in prison, well, I'm not going to do that again. Or because, if everybody reaches culturally, genetically, consciously or unconsciously, or if you don't believe in free will at all, well then there's something in our brain. I don't believe in dualism, although I believe in God. I'm not a Christian, so I believe we are very physical beings, and that our minds do control our bodies. It's not some separate. I don't have a separate spirit living encased in my physical body that's going to go somewhere when I die. So, taking all of that into consideration, we're still left with the point: if somebody commits an act of violence against somebody else, and they are doing it without any type of free will involved in their actions, is it ethically right to punish them for that? Because they can't help themselves. They can't do anything. Is that what you were asking? They can't do anything to stop themselves from going out and murdering someone, because it's, in their, whether you believe it's, in their consciousness, in their mind, in their, genetics, and their cultural, their nurturing, and how.
If a car
could you
breaks,
fix
do you
the
not throw it
conscious?
away?
No, I thought fix it.
Well, there's rehabilitation right there. Even if it's inanimate, I don't necessarily want to say, hey, we're all inanimate. We have this, at least a very illusion of animation, of a consciousness, but we still take action upon those things that have happened. So, if someone has committed a crime, we follow an action that matches that crime.
You're talking about sanity versus insanity. If a person is deemed insane and they go to a hospital for the criminally insane, right? That's not supposed to be punishment, I guess.
Well, we also hope that in a prison that we will teach them something,
Yeah, you have
I
the.
still don't think that addresses the ethical question.
Okay. Anybody else, so we can kind of spread the time out? I'm sorry, Kristen.
No?
Okay.
Seems like free will is the currency of society. Like, commit a crime, you have to pay doing some time in jail. You lose that currency, you lose some free will.
But is it right?
Is it right?
Exactly.
In my opinion, yes. I'll formulate a better reason why I think that at some other time, but yes, I think it's ethical and moral to punish people for their crimes, putting them in jail, killing them perhaps. But we wouldn't have a society if this economics of free will didn't exist. We just wouldn't. It would just be total anarchy, or we'd all be gone by now. We wouldn't have survived as a society.
Right, but couldn't you also say that you might have the causal factors reversed. It might be the reason that we're here is because we you know, the genetic mutations that gave us the desire to help people to be, you know, to expand beyond our family, you know, as we evolved over the generations. I mean, that was a necessary precondition to our existence today. Obviously, if we couldn't do that and we were anarchy-like, we wouldn't be here. Our species wouldn't survive. So it's kind of a necessary precondition that we have the social instinct, and that through that social instinct, we then manifest what we've manifested. You know, we have laws, we have the rule of law.
Ethics and morality
exactly.
are emergent
Exactly.
phenomena of
Exactly.
human society.
Exactly.
And I thought about that before. What would free will look like if there was only one person on Earth? What would it look like? Then you add one more person. Then you add one more. Now you have crowded countries.
But
the
again,
more and more.
You still go back to, you know, what are the starting conditions? I mean, I believe, I'll just stop after this, is, okay, we got to look at morality 100 years ago. It's not morality of the day. It was okay to own slaves 100 years ago. You know, it was okay to do a lot of nasty things 100 years ago. You know, it got nastier and nastier as the further back you go, you could do to people, you know.
And why did it change?
Why did they change? But what I want to say is what I believe is that you can take a person, and this we can't prove, this is not falsifiable, take a person from 2,000 years ago, put them in our society today, and they would be a totally different person than they were in that. So it's very context specific. So they got the genetics, but the context, which, you know, is their environment, the you know, the rules and the institutions that are in place at that time, whether it's familial or, you know, otherwise, you know, that will determine somewhat of how they're going to react to situations. You plop somebody down in today in this room, you know, or in the society today, who's born today or bring them up now, they're not going to be the same person. They might be, you know, Genghis Khan, you know, back then, but now, you know, they could be.
Actually, that is kind of falsifiable in that you can take people out of one culture, one environment,
That's
and
true. You
plant
can
them in
kinda-
another
yeah, you
culture
can.
and find out what happens.
Yeah, and that's.
Okay, let's go back to you in closing thoughts before we move on to the next.
What is choice, and why does it have to be uncaused for us to be responsible for it? Does an ant have free will? I don't know. An ant has free will, but it still has the appearance of being an agent that can make choice. Is it responsible for its choices? The question starts to become silly when you take it down to that level. But does that mean that you can't punish an ant to teach it not to take a certain action? I don't know anything about ants. Maybe you can't, maybe you can. But that's taking it down to an absurd level to make a point, is that somewhere along that continuum, we developed this experience that we call consciousness, and part of that experience is that we believe that consciousness is driving everything. And I think that this is where I take the position, is that I believe, obviously there are some things, kind of going back to genetics and environment, there's got to be at least some of those pieces that are actually driving the consciousness, and we don't think that they are. So why can't it all be all of it? If there's precedence for some of it, I think it should be at least considered that it's all of it, until I have reason to believe otherwise.